And the snap is dry and immediate. Stella Washington is mid-stride when it happens. The frame turning inside out in one clean crack, the whole structure folding backward like something that gave up. And she stands on the wet sidewalk near Pioneer Square, holding the handle of a ruined umbrella, while Seattle rain comes down without any particular concern for her schedule. She tries to bend the frame back. Once, a spoke jabs her palm. Twice. It resists with the indifference of broken things. She stares at it for a full 3 seconds, and then lowers her arm. The anger that rises is not about the umbrella. It is about the email at 11 p.m. with the subject line, "Urgent," for yesterday. As if urgency were a flavor you could deliver retroactively. It is about the 40-minute meeting that resolved exactly nothing, except that another meeting was required. It is about the partner organization that canceled the donation van last Saturday morning with a text message, not even a call, and she spent 2 hours of her day off tracing down an alternate driver through 3 contacts and one very confused neighbor. The anger is about being reliable, genuinely, deeply, structurally reliable, in a way that stopped feeling like a choice somewhere around year 2, and started feeling like the only operating mode she has. There is no fallback setting. There is only holding it together and holding it together. She stands in the rain, and she does not cry. She lets the water run down her forehead, her neck, into the collar of her trench coat, and she catalogs it the way she catalogs everything. One more thing she will manage. She's already composing the mental to-do list. The emergency email to the shelter network, the morning call, the backup plan for the backup plan. Then he passes. He isn't remarkable at first glance. Waterproof jacket, backpack with a tea bag sticking out of the side pocket, the dark circles of someone who has been on a doubled shift and is only now finding the sidewalk again. He moves through the foot traffic with the practiced ease of someone who has learned not to take up more space than necessary. The kind of presence that is deliberate in its quietness. He sees the scene, her, the broken frame, the expression she's wearing and trying not to wear. And he doesn't stop with that particular look she already knows how to deflect. The look that comes with, "Need any help?" inflected in exactly the way that anticipates, "No, I'm fine," and moves on relieved. He doesn't offer that. He simply opens his umbrella slightly to the side, a natural extension of it, no drama, and says, soft and without ceremony, "Come. It fits both of us." And he keeps walking, at her pace, as if sharing an umbrella with a stranger in the rain is the most unremarkable thing in the world. Stella stands still for half a second. The rain is cold on the back of her neck. Then she walks. He talks softly as they move, about nothing urgent. Seattle's wind, he says, has a personal grudge against cheap frames specifically, as if expensive ones somehow offended it less. He once knew a street vendor near the market who lost 3 umbrellas in a single storm and refused to go inside on principle. She almost laughs at that. She catches it at the last moment, but he glances sideways and she can tell he noticed the almost. He doesn't comment on it. They walk 2 more blocks, and she realizes, somewhere in those 2 blocks, that she hasn't performed anything since they started walking. No competence signal, no managed expression, no, "I'm totally fine, just a bit of weather." She has simply been a woman walking under someone else's umbrella, not performing anything at all. When he turns at the corner and says good night, with the tone of a person who needs nothing in return, she watches him go. He doesn't look back. She walks the rest of the way alone, headphones around her neck, the broken umbrella handle still in her bag because she didn't know where to put it, and she arrives at her building lighter than she has any reason to be. This bothers her more than the rain ever could. If you've ever said "I'm fine" on autopilot, even when you weren't, you already know where this is going. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We write more because of you. Dabros. Stella does not throw the umbrella away. She notices this 3 days after the rain, when she opens the coat closet to look for a tote bag, and finds the bent frame wedged between the bag and a box of donor materials she still hasn't filed. The spokes point in different directions. The fabric dried in a wrinkled arc, and the handle, the cheap plastic one that snapped, is still intact, as if the handle survived by not being attached to anything worth saving. She looks at it for a moment, with the same neutral expression she brings to broken appliances and impossible spreadsheets. Then she closes the closet door. She says nothing about this to Mira. Mira Reyes shares the NGO's small kitchen with the regularity of someone who has decided that a thermos is structural support and not a preference. She would take one look at a kept umbrella and say something immediately accurate and slightly unbearable, something about stress disguised as sentimentality, or the emotional mathematics of a woman who manages everything except the things she holds onto without reason. And she would not be wrong. So Stella says nothing, redirects the morning conversation to the funding gap that appeared in Tuesday's budget review, and keeps moving. "You've re-explained the same gap 3 times in the last hour," Mira says, not looking up from her screen. "Because it needs to be solved. It needs to be solved by someone who has eaten something today. Those are not mutually exclusive, but they're not happening at the same time right now." Stella eats. She checks her phone while chewing, which Mira notes and does not comment on, which is one of the things Stella values about her. There is a 4-minute audio from Lena at the top of her messages. She can hear the register of it in the first thumbnail second, that particular warm tone of, "Hey, just letting you know," and she saves it for later, for when she is somewhere quiet enough to actually receive it. The work is not abstract. The NGO coordinates emergency housing resources for families displaced by flooding. Seattle's rainy seasons, combined with aging infrastructure in the city's lower-income districts, create a predictable and preventable crisis that only ever receives institutional attention after a ceiling collapses or a news crew shows up. Stella is the coordinator. Partner contacts, shelter capacity numbers, transportation logistics, the unglamorous engineering of keeping things moving between the people who need help and the systems that provide it reluctantly. She is not the director. She is the engine. She is genuinely good at it, and she is also tired in a way that sleep no longer fully addresses. A bone-level tiredness that has less to do with hours and more to do with operating without a reserve. She walks home on her usual route. Past the hardware store, the Vietnamese restaurant that closes early on Wednesdays, the bus stop where 3 people stand under a shelter built for 2. She passes the pharmacy with the neon sign that bends in the puddle at the corner, reforming with every foot that walks through it, and she registers it the way she registers things she has started noticing without meaning to. She does not see him. She does not look. Noah nods at her from behind the front desk. Noah Barnes, the building's night security, with a crooked umbrella behind the counter and the rare quality of noticing things without amplifying them. She takes the elevator up and presses her keychain by habit while it rises. Apartment key, building key, and the one that doesn't belong to this city. Her sister's spare, from the Atlanta apartment. 3 years carried without being needed, but it has never once felt right to take it off. In the kitchen, waiting for water to boil, she opens her notes app. There is a list she has been keeping for 6 months, small things that still work, which started as a productivity article's suggestion for redirecting anxiety and became something else, something without a name, a record of the details that hold when the larger things shift. Tonight, the pharmacy neon in the rain, Lena's voice, even unlistened, Mira forcing food. She does not add the man on the sidewalk. She closes the app, makes the tea, and takes it to the couch. The building is quiet. Somewhere above her, someone runs water. She thinks, briefly and without elaboration, about the way he said, "Come," not a question, not an offer that could be declined without awkwardness, just a direction, as if it were obvious. She drinks her tea and does not think about it further. She changes her route on Thursday. Not because of him. She makes this clear to herself while lacing her shoes, with the particular firmness she applies to decisions that don't require examining. It is simply a variation. She varies her routes sometimes. The city is large enough that no single path needs to be permanent, and the waterfront route has a better view of the sound, even in the rain, especially in the rain, and it is not about him. It takes 4 extra minutes and gets her wetter, because the waterfront has no awnings, and the wind comes off the water at a slant that none of her umbrellas are equipped to handle. She does not see him. On Friday, she takes her original route. Efficiency. She has a site visit in the afternoon and needs to get into the office early, and the original route saves 4 minutes, and none of this is about avoiding or seeking anything. He is coming the other direction. She recognizes the jacket before she makes out the face, that waterproof gray, the backpack, the particular way he moves. He's clearly at the end of something long. Dark circles deeper than Tuesday. A slight deliberateness in his steps that belongs to a person running on the last of their available energy. He sees her at approximately the same moment she sees him. He says hi and keeps his pace. She says hi and keeps hers. She walks another 40 feet before she realizes she turned to look. Not dramatically, not a double take, just... She looked, and it lasted longer than a passing glance warranted, and she catches herself at 40 feet and faces forward. She keeps walking. That morning, Mira is outside the building with her thermos, and the expression of someone who already has the punchline and is generously waiting to use it. Site visit today. A temporary shelter running at 112% capacity. Families doubling in rooms not built for it. The logistics of relocating people requiring 2 people, a van, and the kind of patience Stella has learned to manufacture on demand when she cannot find it naturally. The van is late. This is not unusual. They stand outside the office building in the specific Seattle cold that isn't dramatic. Not bitter, not biting, just relentlessly, wetly gray. And Mira pours from the thermos into the thermos cap and hands it to Stella. "You look like you slept almost enough," Mira observes. "I slept enough." Those are 2 different sentences. The visit is hard in the way these visits always are. The numbers she manages from her laptop have faces and voices today. A mother asking when the secondary location will have hot water, her tone careful in the way of someone who has learned to calibrate requests against what the system can actually deliver. A volunteer on day 16, whose eyes carry a specific quality that Stella recognizes from the inside. She takes her notes. She commits to 3 specific follow-ups by noon. She is precise and competent, and she does not let the wait show until they are in the van on the way back. And even then, she just goes quiet. "You okay?" Mira asks. "I'm fine." Mira looks at her, doesn't push, holds the thermos out a second time. Stella takes it and holds it with both hands. On the walk home, she passes the spot 3 blocks from Pioneer Square, where the umbrella broke, and she notes that the puddle is different now. The rain has been lighter this week, and keeps walking. She does not check if she is looking for anyone. She arrives home, nods at Noah, takes the elevator up, and adds to her list before she makes dinner. Mira holding the thermos out without saying anything. She looks at it for a second. It's a small thing. It held. Dana. The downpour arrives without forecast. Stella is 2 blocks from the office when the sky decides, and she is already late from a call that ran 20 minutes over its allotted time, and her replacement umbrella, purchased at a gas station for $8 because the good ones keep disappearing, turns inside out inside 30 seconds. She stands under the awning of a closed flower shop and calculates, wait here, or accept that she will arrive at the morning check-in visibly defeated by weather. She waits. The coffee shop 3 doors down has light in the windows and what looks like available seating, and after 5 minutes the rain has not relented, and she is cold enough to trade the awning for cardamom heat. She goes in. The place is small and warm and built of old wood, the kind of cafe that feels like it was specifically constructed to be a refuge from something, with a chalkboard menu and a counter where 2 people have to turn sideways to pass each other. She is already in line when she sees him. Table near the window, backpack on the chair beside him, hands around a cup, expression of someone who arrived here for the same reason she did. He sees her at the same moment. A half second of mutual surprise that neither of them names. "Your umbrella," he says, looking at the inverted frame she is still carrying. "The wind has a personal grudge," she says. The left corner of his mouth moves. Close enough. She orders a coffee. When she turns from the counter, there is a second cup on his table. Tea, still steaming, placed on the empty side with the same unceremonious logic as the umbrella sharing. He is looking at his phone, not at her, not waiting for acknowledgement, not performing generosity. The cup is simply there. She sits. She doesn't say, "You didn't have to." She says, "Thank you," which is the more honest thing. They listen to the rain against the glass for a moment. Outside, people run in soaked coats under held newspapers and the specific expression of people who knew this was going to happen and forgot the umbrella anyway. "What do you do?" he asks. Not the social reflex of small talk, the actual question from someone with time and genuine curiosity in a rain that isn't stopping. She tells him about the NGO, the emergency shelters, the coordination work, the particular gap between what the city allocates and what families actually need before the roof gives out. She has given the elevator pitch version of this so many times that she can feel when she's doing it. The version that makes people nod and say, "Wow, that must be so meaningful," and move on. She starts to give that version. And then she doesn't, because something in the way he is looking at her is not the nod and move on look. "The logistics must be the hardest part," he says when she slows. Not the emotion, the logistics. When the urgency is visible and the system still doesn't move. She looks at him with fresh attention. "Yes," she says. "Exactly that." He works hospital shifts, emergency intake. He describes it with the same specificity she used for the shelters. Visible urgency, slow systems, the damage that lives in the gap between a patient in front of you and a form behind a firewall that hasn't loaded. He mentions a teenager he has been tracking through the intake system, 16, no fixed address, arriving every few weeks with different stated reasons that all mean the same underlying thing. He doesn't frame it as sacrifice or advocacy. He describes what he does, flags the file, finds continuity in a system built to forget. At the counter, the barista calls him by a mispronounced name, a Korean syllable approximated into something approximate, and he corrects it gently, a single sentence, and returns to the conversation without pausing. No irritation, no explanation. Just the correction, and then forward. The ease of it stays with her longer than she expects. There is something in the way he moves through small frictions, not ignoring them, not inflating them, that she keeps returning to. The rain slows. They both look at their cups, then at the window. "Same direction?" he asks. "Probably," she says. They walk the last 12 blocks to the neighborhood without forcing the conversation. It picks up and settles naturally. When they reach the fork where their routes split, he says, "See you around," with the same unceremonious tone as that first night, and she walks the rest of the way with the tea still warm in her stomach, and the sense that she has been in the presence of someone who did not need a single thing from her the entire time. She adds nothing to her list that night, but she thinks about the list. His name is Axton. She learns this the most anticlimactic way possible. Noah mentions it. "Your neighbor in 412, Noah says, handing her a package that was left at the desk. Left a note in case this arrived while he was on shift. The note is written on the back of a receipt. "If this is Stella Washington's package, I signed for it. Axton, 412. Neat handwriting, no fuss, no phone number appended. She didn't know he lived in the building, floor above her. One elevator, same lobby, same gray Seattle morning light, coming through the front glass. She doesn't knock on 412 to introduce herself. She leaves a note under his door. Thanks for signing. 311. Because names feel like steps she hasn't decided to take yet, and she is careful with steps, and this feels like the right amount of acknowledgement for a receipt note. He leaves a reply the next morning. No problem. Tea's good for the cold if you haven't tried it yet. Axton. She reads it twice. Then she puts it in the kitchen drawer with the takeout menus and the extra batteries and the small objects she doesn't throw away without a reason. What develops, without anyone negotiating it, is a pattern. Not scheduled. This is important to her, this distinction. There is no meet at 7:30 that would make it a thing she had agreed to and could back out of. Their commute times simply intersect. He leaves for shifts around 8:15. She leaves for the NGO around 8:20. They end up on the same stretch of sidewalk 3, sometimes 4 mornings a week, and fall into step naturally enough that walking together for 2 blocks before his route angles toward the hospital feels like the obvious thing. Mornings are short. He is conserving what he has for the day ahead. She is building toward the version of herself she needs to be before 9 a.m. They talk about the neighborhood, a construction permit that is going to disrupt the shortcut by the library, a restaurant that keeps revising its hours midweek, the new scaffolding on the corner building that has changed all the angles of the rain. Small observations, no pressure. The kind of conversation that asks for nothing and leaves something. Evenings are different. He comes off shifts at varying hours. She rarely leaves before 7, and when their returns happen to converge near the building, they slow down and the conversation expands. She tells him about a donation that came through after 3 months of follow-up calls, the specific physical relief of it, like a pressure finally released. He tells her about a case he has been threading through intake, the particular patients required to maintain continuity inside a system designed to start fresh with each arrival. He doesn't editorialize. He describes what happened and what he did next. She notices, listening to him, that he never frames his own effort as heroic or sacrificial. It is simply work he does. One evening, she watches him stop for a teenager near the corner, the same kid he'd mentioned from intake, she realizes a few beats later. The teenager asks about a bus connection. Axton doesn't answer immediately. He actually takes his phone out and checks the schedule, then explains the transfer. Then, almost as an afterthought, quietly, he asks if the kid has eaten. The teenager says yes with the particular inflection of someone who is saying no. Axton reaches into his backpack, not his lunch, just a protein bar he keeps in the front pocket, and hands it over without commentary, without the expression that requests gratitude. The teenager takes it and heads toward the stop. Axton falls back into step beside her as if nothing transpired. She wants to say something about what she saw. She doesn't, because naming it might change the texture of it. But she thinks, with the clarity of someone who recognizes a pattern from having lived inside one. Who takes care of you? She knows this architecture. The compulsive readiness, the preloaded kindness, the instinct to fill a gap before it's announced. She has been living it from the inside for years. She knows that it comes from somewhere specific, and costs something specific, and that the cost tends to be invisible until it isn't. She sees it in him clearly. The man who has a tea bag in his side pocket, the man who always has a spare, the man who recalibrates his pace to match a stranger's without making it a gesture. She says nothing. She walks beside him. At the building door, Noah holds it open and nods at both of them, says nothing beyond that. Upstairs, Stella finally listens to Lena's audio, the one she has been deferring. Hey, just letting you know I talked to Mom, and she asked about you, so I told her you were doing important stuff, which is true. Also, I don't know, you sound tired even when you don't say anything. Not the regular tired. The other kind. You doing okay? I'm here, okay? She listens twice. Does not reply tonight. Opens her list instead. Adds. The way he didn't explain why he handed the kid the bar. Charkurti. Mira finds the broken umbrella. She is at Stella's apartment on a Sunday for a grant cycle debrief. The office feels too institutional for the kind of thinking that requires actual thinking, so this happens on couches sometimes, with better coffee and less fluorescent light. And she opens the coat closet looking for a second chair, and the bent frame falls out and lands on the floor with the specific sound of something that has been placed and is now exposed. Is this... Mira picks it up and turns it over. One spoke is bent at a 90-degree angle. The fabric dried in a wrinkled arc over the broken ribs. Is this on purpose? I haven't gotten around to throwing it out. Mira examines the way the handle is propped against the closet wall. This is not a haven't gotten around to it. This is placed. This is deliberate non-disposal. It's in a closet. It is in a closet at an angle, leaned against the back wall like a piece of art about something. Mira sets it against the apartment wall and sits in the chair she retrieved. That right there is stress disguised as... Don't. I was going to say something different. You were going to say sentimentality. I was going to say something you're not ready to name yet. Mira opens her thermos, which is a different thing. Stella opens her laptop. Grant cycle. We have 3 hours. They work for those 3 hours with the focused, efficient ease of two people who have been doing this long enough to know each other's thinking patterns. The debrief is genuinely productive. They identify 2 gaps in the upcoming cycle, a strategy for the new partner outreach, a section of the impact report that needs restructuring. Mira is sharp and honest and does not soften things that need to be clear. This is why Stella values her. But at the end, when the papers are organized and the coffee has gone cold, Mira looks at the broken umbrella still leaning against the wall and says, "Is there someone?" There's no one. Is there the idea of someone? That's too vague a category to answer. No, it isn't. It's exactly specific enough. Mira turns the thermos cap in her hands. A person you think about in a non-problem-solving way. That's the category. Stella closes her laptop, sets it on the cushion beside her. There's a neighbor. We walk in the same direction sometimes. He's decent, present without drama. He doesn't ask too much. She pauses. That's all. Mira is quiet for a moment. Then, a neighbor who's decent and present and doesn't ask too much. She nods slowly. Stella, you just described your dream man in 9 words. She laughs. Not a managed one. An actual laugh. The kind that arrives from somewhere she didn't authorize it, costs nothing, and surprises her from the inside. Mira grins with the satisfaction of someone who has been patient. His name? Axton. Good name. Clean. Memorable. Mira stands and puts on her coat. Can I say one more thing? I can't stop you. You said, I don't know how to describe it better than that. And you describe everything better than anyone I know. The fact that you don't have language for this one particular thing is itself language. She buttons her coat. Think about that. After she leaves, the apartment is quiet in a way that has its own texture. Stella opens the Notes app. The list has 43 items now. She scrolls through them slowly. The pharmacy neon, Mira's thermos, Noah's crooked umbrella at the counter, the drawing taped to a cot at a Tuesday site visit, the persimmons at the Saturday market she bought without a plan. She finds a line she added 2 weeks ago, without attributing it to anyone. The way some people make space without taking it. Below it, she adds, the bar he gave the kid, without making it a story. She reads both lines, locks the phone, gets up and picks the broken umbrella from against the wall, puts it back in the closet, more deliberately this time, propped exactly as before. By the 3rd week, neither of them pretends the timing is accidental. Not in words. There is no conversation that begins, so I suppose we do this now, regularly. It simply becomes part of the week's structure, the way certain things become structure without a decision. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, they are on the same sidewalk. Wednesday and Friday evenings, their arrivals overlap enough that slowing down in front of the building feels natural. Saturday mornings, if he isn't covering a shift, he materializes in the lobby around the time she is heading to the farmer's market 3 blocks east. She does not tell Lena. She listens to the week's audio. Hey, just letting you know it's been cold here. Also, why haven't you called Mom back? Also, I got a new bus route and it's actually fine. I'm here, okay? And she thinks about what she would say if she tried to explain Axton to her sister. She does not have the vocabulary assembled yet. It isn't about him. It's about her own sense of what she's doing, which she can't name without either overstating it or reducing it to nothing. And she doesn't want to do either. What she knows? With him, she does not perform competence. This is the distinction she keeps returning to, the one that seems to matter most. She is genuinely competent. This is not false modesty. It is simply the baseline. And with almost everyone in her life, that competence is also a signal she sends. It says, "I am fine. I am managing. Nothing is slipping. Please do not worry about me. Please do not need me to be anything other than the person who has it together." The signal is not dishonest. It is, however, expensive. With Axton, the competence is just a fact. He doesn't need the signal because he isn't watching for something to worry about. He is simply present, and the simplicity of his presence means she can be simply present too. One Saturday, they walk back from the market together. She has a bag of persimmons and a bunch of cilantro she bought without a specific plan for either, which is unusual for her. She doesn't usually buy things without plans. He has coffee from the market stand and the particular looseness in his posture that means he slept a full night, which she has learned to read as the exception rather than the norm. He asks about the grant cycle, not as a conversation opener, specifically with the slight furrow that means he actually wants to know. She tells him the actual version, not the managed one, not the signal, the funding gap, the way city allocations lag reality by about 18 months. The particular exhaustion of operating as the bridge between institutional systems and human need, filling the distance with your own reserves, because there is nothing else to fill it with. She expects to be interrupted with a solution offer, or a redirect. He doesn't. He stays with it. "What would help?" he asks when she finishes. Not "what can I do?" That formulation that makes the helper the center. Specifically, what would help? What does the situation need? If the system were designed by people who'd actually had to use it, she says. He nods. Same problem in every building. How do you keep going? She asks, and realizes as she says it that she is asking herself as much as him. He thinks about this with the seriousness it deserves. I keep one specific patient in mind. Not all of them. The weight of all of them is unmanageable. 1. When the work feels hollow, I think about the one case where the continuity made the concrete difference. He pauses. You probably have an equivalent. She thinks of the mother asking about hot water, the way her tone calculated exactly how much to ask for. She thinks of the drawing on the cot. I do, she says. At the building, Noah holds the door and says, afternoon, with his standard economy of words. She thinks about what Mira said. Dream man in 9 words. And she doesn't know if that framing is accurate exactly. But she knows something true. The weight she carries into this building every evening has been slightly less lately. Not because anything in the world has changed, because she has not been carrying it entirely alone. She says, Good Saturday. He says, Good Saturday. She goes upstairs, makes dinner, and adds 1 item to the list. He asked what would help. Takari. He disappears for 11 days. Not entirely. She sees him once in the lobby on day 4, heading out in scrubs, moving with the distracted focus of someone already 10 minutes into their next task before they've finished the current one. He says hi with the energy of a person operating on minimum settings. She says hi back. The elevator closes before she can read anything else in his face. She does not text him. She has his number. They exchanged it practically a few weeks back for building logistics. And she picks up her phone on day 6, composes something, and then puts the phone face down on the counter. He is working. He is tired. She is not going to be another thing on his list. She is a person who does not add to people's lists. This is, she recognizes as she puts the phone down, both genuinely considerate and slightly convenient for her. On day 7, Mira says, You've been different quiet. I'm always quiet. There's regular quiet and there's something on your mind quiet, and this is clearly the second one. Mira turns from her screen. I'm not asking. I'm just noting that I notice. Stella redirects to a partnership email that needs a response, and Mira, to her credit, redirects with her. This is another thing she values about Mira. Knowing when not to push. On day 9, she passes the coffee shop on the way back from a site visit, and she stops at the window for a moment, looking in, without consciously deciding to stop. He is not inside. She keeps walking, and is briefly, genuinely annoyed at herself for stopping, and then annoyed at herself for the annoyance, which is getting recursive and unproductive. On day 11, she comes home from a visit that ran until 8 in the evening, soaked through because the replacement umbrella began its death process somewhere around block 6. She is composing the next morning's email in her head, the shelter capacity report, the follow-up call. She comes through the front door and he is in the lobby talking quietly to Noah. Not a long conversation, just an overlap. 2 people at the end of their days in the same radius. He looks like someone who has run on minimum settings for a long time and is running lower. The dark circles have deepened. There is a stillness in him that reads not as calm, but as the last structured layer over something that needs to stop. He sees her come through the door. Something in his face shifts. A small shift. The kind of face makes when something familiar arrives in a place you needed something familiar. Rough day? She asks. 3rd consecutive double, he says. Just a fact. No complaint in it. No request for sympathy. She hears everything he left out. Whether it was 3 doubles in a row, or whether the first one was by choice, and the second and third were because saying no requires something he isn't good at spending. Whether Dr. Klein was the one who asked. She doesn't ask any of this. Not yet. Instead, I'm making soup, if you want some. He looks at her with the particular expression of someone recalculating from first principles. I don't want to be. You'd be doing me a favor. I always make too much and eat it alone for 3 days. The corner of his mouth moves at alone for 3 days. Close enough to a smile. Okay, he says. The soup is simple and adequate. She is not performing her cooking. He sits at her kitchen counter and doesn't fill the silence unnecessarily. And the silence is the comfortable kind. 2 people who don't need to perform presence at each other. He wraps both hands around the bowl. His cheap leather watch slips down his wrist. She registers, in a way she doesn't examine too closely, that he looks different when he isn't moving. Like a person who has been in motion for so long that stillness has a quality of revelation about it. She thinks, this is what it looks like when he finally stops. When he goes, standing at her door with the empty bowl returned, he says, thank you. Not a social reflex. With the specific weight of someone who means it and is not used to needing to say it. She says, anytime. She means that, without qualification. The site visit collapses on a Thursday morning. Stella is at her desk at 10:59 a.m. when the email arrives. Subject line regretfully. From the partner organization she has been coordinating with for 3 months. The partnership is not postponed or modified. It is canceled. The whole arrangement. The secondary shelter access. The donation pipeline. The co-coordinator role that was going to let her be in 2 places at once during the next high-capacity period. 3 months of calls and logistics and carefully built trust, undone in a 3-paragraph email that took someone 10 minutes to write. She reads it in the office hallway, standing, and she feels the specific sensation of a carefully constructed structure, losing a load-bearing wall. She goes back to her desk. She opens a blank document and starts listing what has to be rebuilt, in order of priority, starting with what can't wait. She does not let her face show what she is feeling, which is not devastated exactly, but the particular bone-tiredness of someone who has been rebuilding the same wall in slightly different locations for so long that the competence at rebuilding it and the exhaustion of needing to are indistinguishable from each other. Mira sees it anyway. Take 5 minutes. I can't. You absolutely can. You just won't, which is different. 5 minutes outside. She takes 5 minutes on the building steps, in the cold gray that passes for outdoors in Seattle in November, and she calls Lena. Not to talk through the problem. She doesn't want the problem solved. She just wants a voice she trusts. Lena picks up on the second ring, voice immediate. Hey, what's wrong? Rough day, Stella says. I just needed to, hear you. You needed to call someone who loves you, Lena says, simply, without making it large. "I'm here. You don't have to explain." They stay on the line for 4 minutes. Lena fills the time talking about something entirely unrelated. A route change at work. A neighbor's newly territorial cat. Something funny someone said at the stop. Stella listens to the voice and the warmth of it, not the content. When she goes back inside, the structural problem is unchanged, but she has more ground to stand on. She works until 7. She gathers everything. Her bag, the replacement umbrella, the folder of backup contacts she keeps on paper because systems fail. She is composing tomorrow's emergency email in her head as she walks, and the rain is light but consistent, and she turns a corner and her shoe catches a raised edge of sidewalk. Not a fall, she catches herself against a wall. But the bag swings and drops, and everything inside it takes the opportunity to scatter. Phone, keys, the folder, 3 weeks of organized contacts face down on wet concrete. She crouches, gathers. Her hands are cold, and the folder is getting wet, and the papers are starting to separate. He is beside her in 10 seconds, crouching, picking up papers without commentary, without, "What happened?" or, "Are you okay?" Just 2 efficient hands handling the immediate thing. She recognizes the jacket. She recognizes his hands. They get everything back into the bag. They stand. "You okay?" he asks. "I'm fine," she says. And she hears it leave her mouth the way it always does. The automatic version, reflexive and clean and not entirely untrue. And then, because something in her is genuinely tired of the reflex, because she is standing on a wet sidewalk at 7:15 with a rebuilt bag and 3 months of work dissolved in an email. No, it's been a very bad day. He doesn't say, "That sucks," or, "At least it's almost over," or, "You'll figure it out." He says, "There's a covered spot 2 steps back. 2 minutes. The rain's going to get heavier." 2 minutes. Not, "Let me help you figure this out." Not, "Tell me everything." Just coverage and 2 minutes, and the specific mercy of the most manageable possible unit of time. She steps back with him under the hardware store awning. The store is closed, lights off, the metal gate down. The rain does get heavier, just as he said. She stands in the shelter of the awning and breathes, properly, for the first time since 10:59 a.m. The kind of breathing that means her lungs are actually working instead of just maintaining the minimum. He stands beside her and doesn't fill the space with anything. There is no, "Do you want to talk about it?" There is no performance of attentiveness. He is just there. "Thank you," she says, when the rain lightens and they can move again. "The folder's still a little damp," he says, "but the back page should dry fine." She looks at him. "You check the back page." It looked like contacts. Those seemed like the important ones. She walks home alone, the way she always does. Inside, she sits on her kitchen floor for 3 minutes, something she does when she needs to reset without anyone watching, a private thing she has never explained to anyone. And then she stands up and makes tea. She opens her phone. She scrolls to his name. For the first time, without an official reason, without a package or a logistics question, she texts him. "Thank you," for the folder, and the rest. 3 minutes pass. Then, "Anytime? How are you, actually?" She stares at the actually. The actually changes the sentence entirely. It's the difference between a social formality and a real question, and she knows the difference. She has been on the receiving end of the formality version her entire life. She does not know what to do with the actually. She writes, "Getting there," and she means it. She is. The shelter hits full capacity on a Wednesday night. The call comes at 8 p.m., 32 families, 3 children under 5, a contact at the secondary shelter running in circles, a van that was confirmed in the morning and is now unreachable, and a city liaison who has been on leave since Monday, which Stella is only learning about now, at 8:05. She has her coat half off. She puts it back on. She sits at the kitchen counter and starts calling. She calls for 4 hours. By midnight, she has placed 28 of the 32 families in confirmed locations. The remaining 4 require a partnership she hasn't been able to confirm, a van she doesn't yet have, and a secondary approval that can only come through official channels, which means it cannot come through at 12:14 a.m. She writes everything down. She maps the morning, who to call first, what the contingencies are, what the email at 8 a.m. needs to contain, and in what order. She sends the briefing at 12:40 and stays at her kitchen counter with the overhead light on, and the specific quiet of a city that is still moving, but that she can't feel from here. Mira stayed until 11, left only when Stella told her to go home, and left her thermos on the desk as a gesture that was also a rebuke. Stella opens her phone. Axton's thread is at the top of her recent messages now, which she notices but doesn't rearrange. She types, "Are you around?" She stares at it. This is not nothing. She is aware, very specifically aware, that this is not nothing. She has been the person who holds everything alone for so long that asking is its own category of exposure. Not vulnerability in the abstract, not a weakness. The specific risk of needing someone and finding that need inconvenient for them. Of discovering at midnight that you are the person who shows up for everyone, and no one has recalibrated their route for you. She has been managing this reflex her whole adult life. The "I'm fine" on autopilot. The independence that is partly genuine and partly preemptive self-protection. She sits with the unsent message for 45 seconds. She sends it. 3 minutes pass. Then his reply. "Just got off a shift. I'm near the office, actually. I cut through 5th on my way home. Want company? Near the office. Past midnight, at the end of a doubled shift, and he is near her office." She doesn't examine whether this is coincidence or a recalibration he hasn't mentioned. What matters is what she types. Yes, he is there in 8 minutes. She comes downstairs in her coat, and they stand on the wet sidewalk, and he doesn't ask her to explain. He starts walking slowly in the direction of her building, and she falls into step. She tells him about the 4 families, not as a problem she needs him to solve, not as an emotional download, just out loud. The math, the people behind the math, the particular specific helplessness of a system that runs on goodwill and runs out at midnight when the need doesn't. He listens. He asks 2 questions, both of them precise and useful. What the specific bottleneck in the secondary approval process is, and whether the van driver she'd called on a Saturday morning 3 months back, the neighbor's driver, was still a reliable contact. "You remember the van driver," she says. "You mentioned him in the cafe," he says. "The way you described calling him, the Saturday morning, the 3 contacts before him. He sounded like someone worth knowing." Something shifts in her chest. Not a large shift. A door already slightly open, moving another degree. "He's reliable," she says. "I'll call him first." They walk the rest of the way without talking, and the silence is the kind she has started to recognize as different from the silence she lives in alone. Not empty, inhabited. At the building door, Noah is at the tail end of his shift, coat on, keys in hand. He sees them both and says simply, "Long night for everyone." It is the most accurate sentence anyone has spoken all day. Upstairs, she doesn't go to sleep. She opens the list, scrolls all the way to the bottom, and adds, "He remembered the van driver." Then, slowly, with the deliberateness of someone writing something they mean, "I asked. He came. This is allowed to count." If you're sitting there right now hoping she lets him stay, you already know where your heart is. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Thijs Derwin. The email from Portland arrives on a Thursday morning with the subject line, "An opportunity we'd like to discuss." Stella reads it standing at her kitchen counter, cup of coffee going cold in her other hand. Senior Coordinator, Regional Housing Advocacy Organization. She knows their work, their publications, their policy record. Real infrastructure, real resources. A director who reached out personally because she had seen Stella's name on a grant impact report that circulated in the right rooms at the right time. The salary is 30% higher. The team is 6 people. the position would let her do the work she has been doing here, but with the actual organizational support she has been manufacturing herself for 3 years. She reads it twice, closes her phone, opens it again, reads it once more. She does not tell Mira for 3 days, not because she's decided, she hasn't, but because naming it out loud turns it into a choice she has to make rather than a possibility she is still holding privately, still turning over in her hands, still measuring against things she hasn't fully identified. She carries it the way she carries the Atlanta key, close, unresolved, present in every pocket. She does not tell Axton. This is the one she notices most acutely in herself. She has built justifications that are all technically true. Nothing is confirmed yet. She hasn't requested the follow-up call. There is nothing concrete to report. All of this is accurate. None of it addresses the more honest reason, which is that naming it to him means acknowledging, out loud, that his presence in her week has become a variable she is calculating around, and she is not yet sure she has the language for that, or whether she wants to use it. The walks continue. Tuesday morning, Friday evening, the occasional Saturday. The rhythm holds. She is aware, with the self-awareness of someone who monitors her own patterns with the thoroughness she applies to shelter logistics, that she has become reliant on this rhythm in ways she didn't sanction. Lena calls. A real call, not an audio, which means something, because Lena knows Stella needs warning for real calls and is giving her no warning at all. "Are you happy in Seattle?" Lena asks. Not, "How are you?" Not, "What's new?" The direct question, a beat. "I'm doing important work." "I know. That's not the same thing." "Lena, you've been there 3 years, and you've never once said, 'I love it here.' You say it's fine and it's what I need right now. And none of that is love, Stella. I'm not asking you to come home. I'm asking honestly. Do you want to?" Stella is quiet for longer than she intends to be. She says she'll think about it. Lena says, "That's fair. I'm here, okay?" And lets her go. And Stella stands in her kitchen afterward with her phone and the cold awareness that she doesn't know the answer, and that not knowing the answer is itself a kind of answer, though she can't work out yet what it's an answer to. The van driver comes through for the 4 families. The secondary approval clears by 9 a.m. Friday. Mira sends a gif of a confetti cannon, and Stella laughs at her desk, genuinely not performed, and Mira grins and says nothing. Then Mira looks up a beat later and says, "You seem like someone sitting next to a decision." "I'm always in the middle of decisions." "Not like this. Like someone who's hoping it'll resolve itself if they wait long enough." Stella looks at her screen for a moment. Then, "There's an offer. Portland. Better position, better team, better resources for the actual work." "But?" "I haven't decided yet." "Does Axton know?" "It's not his decision to be part of." "I didn't ask whose decision it is." A beat. "No, he doesn't know." Mira closes her thermos cap, says nothing else, and returns to her screen. This is one of the things Stella values about her. She knows when a point has been made. That evening, the walk home is easy and warm. He mentions a community garden going in 3 blocks north. She says they should walk over on Saturday. He agrees. Everything is simple and forward-moving. And the whole time, Portland lives at the edge of every exchange, present in what she doesn't say, taking up space in the silence she usually finds comfortable. She goes home and adds nothing to her list. She tells him on a Wednesday. Not planned, the storm makes the decision for her. A real storm. Wind from the east, the kind that turns umbrellas into engineering problems, buses running behind, the city operating at the resigned efficiency of somewhere that has long accepted it, will be perpetually wet. She is leaving a meeting that ran over. He is leaving a shift that did the same. They emerge from different streets at the same intersection and nearly walk into each other. Both soaked, both holding the inverted remains of umbrellas that gave up in the first block. They look at each other in the middle of the sidewalk, with the rain coming at an angle, and for a moment, there is something almost absurd about it. The symmetry of it, both of them wrecked by the same weather, neither of them prepared. "Come on," he says. The covered bus stop is 40 feet east, empty at 10:15 p.m., half its shelter blocked by scaffolding, but better than standing in the open. They stand close. The rain fills in the space on all sides. "I have to tell you something," she says. "Okay." She tells him about Portland. The offer, the timeline, the 2 weeks she spent carrying it without saying anything. She watches his face while she talks. It stays steady in the way that is actively maintained rather than natural, the way she has learned to recognize as the face he makes when he is organizing his internal responses rather than feeling nothing. "Why didn't you tell me before?" he asks when she finishes. "Because saying it made it real, and that felt like it involved you, and I didn't know if it should." She looks at him. "And I was afraid that if I said it, I'd figure out what my answer was going to be, and I wasn't ready to know." The rain on the shelter roof, the sound of a bus several blocks away. "When you disappear," she says, and this is the thing she has been carrying for weeks, the thing under the thing. "When you go into consecutive shifts, and I don't hear from you for days, my reflex is to assume I did something wrong. I know that's not what's happening. I know it's not about me. But that's how absence lands when you're not used to someone being present. And then they're not." He is quiet for a moment. She watches him receive it. "When you manage everything," he says carefully, "when you always have the answer, when you hold the shelters and the families and the funding gaps without appearing to need anything in return, it feels like there's no room for another person to show up. Like presence alone isn't enough of a contribution. Like I need to be solving something to justify being there. You think you need to earn being there," she says. "I was taught that you earn your place. And I was taught that needing someone makes you a burden." They stand in that for a full beat. Two people, same rain, same formation. The parallel between them settling quietly without requiring anyone to announce it. "I didn't take the Portland offer," she says. "I told them yesterday." Something moves in his expression, not just relief. "I wanted to be sure I was deciding for the right reasons," she says. "Not just because of walks, because that would be the wrong kind of decision." She looks at him. "It turned out to be about more than the walks, but I needed to know that first." "What was it about?" he asks. 3 years of building something here that I'm not ready to leave. And the fact that better resources doesn't automatically mean better work." She pauses. "And the walks." He doesn't smile exactly. Something more honest than a smile. "I've been taking extra shifts," he says, "because I don't know what to do with the silence at home. It's easier to be moving than to sit in it." He says this without inflection, with the flatness of someone reading a file on themselves. "I know it's not sustainable. You know it," she says, a small, dry edge. "I'm working on it. I believe you." The bus they are not catching arrives and leaves. Neither of them moves toward the street. "I texted you from the office at midnight," she says, "and you were already near the office." "I adjusted my route about 2 weeks ago," he says. "I wasn't planning to mention it." "Why not?" "I didn't want you to feel claimed." "Yes." She looks at him. At the dark circles that are the price of 3 consecutive doubles. At the cheap leather watch on his wrist that keeps sliding down because the band is a size too loose. At the tea bag still in the side pocket of his backpack, because he always has one. Because he is always prepared for someone else's comfort, even when he has run out of reserves for his own. "I felt it anyway," she says. "The root. I felt it, and I didn't say anything. Because I was afraid if I named it, it would become a thing I could lose." He holds her gaze steadily. The rain doesn't ease. "Okay," he says. "Not an ending. The specific kind of okay that means, I heard it. I'm not going anywhere. We can build from here." She breathes. Not the managed kind. Not the survival breathing she has been doing since 10:59 a.m. The Thursday the partnership collapsed. A real one. From the bottom of her lungs, the kind that only happens when she has enough ground under her. "What do we do now?" she says. "We go inside," he says. "And tomorrow we figure out the next part." That's a reasonable plan. They walk to the building through what remains of the storm. Noah is behind the counter on the late shift, sees them both. Two soaked adults, no functioning umbrellas, arriving at the same door, and says nothing except, "Towels in the side cabinet if you need them." His crooked umbrella leans against the wall behind him, the one he would lend anyway. Axton holds the building door. She walks through. 3 weeks later, Stella adds the final item to her list. No ceremony. She is on the couch with tea and her phone, scrolling through the 48 items the list has become since October. She reads them slowly, the way you read something you wrote to yourself during a difficult year. The pharmacy neon in the rain, Mira's thermos on the bad days, Noah's crooked umbrella at the counter, the drawing taped to a cot at a Tuesday site visit, the van driver who came through at 9 on a Friday morning. All the small things that held when the larger things were shifting. She reads them the way you read a record of yourself. She reaches the last 3 entries. "He remembered the van driver," I asked. "He came. This is allowed to count. The recalibrated route." She types below them. "He just stayed, and I let him." She locks her phone, drinks her tea. The Atlanta key is still on her keychain. It will stay, not as a door she plans to walk through, but as the specific weight of knowing that Lena is a flight and a call away, and that the distance between them is a choice she made for reasons that still hold, and that she no longer needs to justify to herself. She called her sister the week after the bus stop conversation, a real call, and told her about Axton plainly, who he is, what the walks are, what she decided, and why. Lena said, "Finally, and tell me everything, and when do I meet him in that exact order?" And Stella felt, talking to her, that Atlanta and Seattle were not 2 cities in tension. They were 2 points in the same life. Mira knows. She asked what changed, and Stella said, "I asked for something. It worked out." Mira said obviously, and extended the thermos, and that was the whole conversation, which is exactly the right length. Axton said no to a 4th consecutive double. He mentioned it on a Saturday walk, voice neutral, the tone of someone reporting a fact they are still deciding how to feel about. She asked, "How did that feel?" He said, "Like putting something heavy down." She said, "That's because it was." He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "Yeah," which was the most honest 1-syllable response she had heard in a long time. His mother sent food. Axton mentioned it the way people mention things they can't quite translate across contexts. "She does this when she thinks I'm not taking care of myself." Stella said, "She's not wrong, is she?" He accepted this without argument. She privately logged it as progress, which says something about both of them that she finds funny and doesn't comment on. The broken umbrella is still in the closet. It will stay there. She has thought about why several times, without arriving at an answer she needs to act on. The closest she has come. It is the object that started the thing. Not romantically, just as a fact. The snap was the beginning, and keeping the frame is not sentimentality exactly. It is more like keeping the first page. The record of where it started. What she understands now, that she didn't at the beginning, the weight she has been carrying alone for years, is not evidence of strength. It is evidence of a habit learned young, reinforced consistently, genuinely useful in some contexts, and genuinely costly in others. The same is true for him, the compulsive caregiving, the forward motion, the not stopping. Both habits wore the costume of competence. Both were, at their root, a way of never having to find out what happens when you ask. They are both, still, learning what happens when you ask. On a Sunday morning, 3 weeks after the bus stop, they walk to the farmer's market. He has an umbrella, a real one, with spokes that work, not a gas station compromise. It rains because Seattle, because of course it does. They walk under it without discussion, the canopy covering both of them with room. Not because one frame is broken and there is no alternative. Not because of emergency. Because the umbrella fits two people, and they both know this now, and have chosen it, and there is nothing further that needs to be said about it. The persimmons are back in season. She buys some. He carries the bag without asking. She lets him. You made it to the end. If this story moved something in you, you already know what to do.